Okay, so.
Wow.
Okay, we begin.
Good morning, everybody. I'd also like to thank the organizers for this fine week. And for inviting me to take part in it. Okay, so. Oh, I didn't. Okay. Oh, so my title is Information in Islamic Geography. And actually, we won't go all the way to the 14th century, probably. We will talk about two texts written in the 10th and in the late 10th and in the early 13th. Had I asked you before you looked at the reading, if you had, to name an Islamic geographer, who would you mention? Muqaddasi? Really? Why Muqaddasi?
Because he wrote about Jerusalem ports, and this is my main subject, so I know him quite.
Okay, right. So maybe from an Israeli perspective, then perhaps, especially from the perspective of Morei Derech, of tour guides, which I guess we both are or were. So Muqaddasi is an important source. He describes the Palestine or the land of Israel in detail. And it's useful to take him out and read excerpts in the right places. Anyone else? But he may, I'm not sure if an international audience would mention Muqaddasi.
Ibn Battuta?
Ibn Battuta. Why Ibn Battuta?
We traveled this summer.
Right. So I'm not sure even the Battuta really deserves the sort of the scientific label of geographer. He was the great traveler, the best known traveler of the Muslim world. He traversed the world back and forth. Right. So it's a good choice, but it's more of the travelogue than of a geographical treatise. Yes.
So I'm not an expert in this field, but what comes to mind is each region.
Okay. Right. So, yeah, that's exactly what I heard from Jessica on our first encounter on Sunday. Yes, that actually she's heard of Idrisi, but right, you weren't sure you can name other.
I didn't think I could name any other.
Any
I know the big name.
So yes, definitely Al-Idrisi is the best known Muslim geographer. I quote Yossi Rapoport, who should have been here had he wanted to come to Israel. It's a beautiful book about Islamic maps, hailing or saying that Al-Idrisi is sort of a celebrity today. And a wonderful example of European Islamic scientific collaboration. So he is best known, of course, for this. Really? Yeah, for this beautiful map. Surat al-Ard, the map of the world, or an exact translation would really be Magamundi, the image of the world. Drawn in 548, 1154, after several years of work. The map was commissioned by the Sicilian Norman ruler Roger II. It's also known as the Bulla Poggiana, or who there's legends, right, about it, why exactly he invited Sharif and Idrisi to do the work, but Idrisi lived up to the project. He spent 9 years collecting the data for this world map, and writing a commentary that goes with this work, which is this is made of 70 plates from an edition of the late 13th century. So we're not the original artifact, which was cast in silver, was lost, and we can't be 100% sure this map of the 13th century is exactly a Reason's map, but it must be a close simile of it. And I guess you'll agree that it's beautiful, not only, you know, very impressive, very impressive. It's upside down for us because medieval Islamic maps, at least, maybe I don't know about European maps, were oriented towards the south. It's very difficult.
Nothing really often happens.
So Islamic maps have the south at the top and would have been very difficult for, at least for me, to make sense of the map. But I didn't put it upside down. It's usually presented this way, yes.
And so he had originally a map or a model, or both a map and a model? Was there something about it that was also like
It was,
a built model?
it was, what I read is that it was cast in silver. And, but it must have been a map. But I don't want to talk about this map. Yes, yes, I brought the map to say that we will not. Yes.
It's such a bit,
You know, it's beautiful, it's very interesting.
yes.
But what I would like to talk about is a different Islamic tradition. Not the tradition of portraying the world, but rather portraying the world of Islam. The formation of an Islamic geography, which actually ignores the parts of the world that were not ruled by Muslims. But of course, it's worthwhile to begin with this, so to show the contrast. And the other tradition runs actually parallel. I mean, this is, I think, a unique achievement. But we will talk about a map and a lexicon. Actually will talk about texts more than about maps. And this was accompanied by a long text called Kitab Nusrat al-Miftah fi Iftirat al-Afaq. The entertainment of he who wishes to traverse the world, or Kitab Ruja, the book of Roger. And it's a long treatise with plenty of textual information on the kingdoms and peoples of the world. It was completed after Roger's death. The map was presented just a month before his death, and then Al-Ikrisi continued to work, and 4 years later, he completed also the treatise. The part on the geography of Europe was translated many times, and it's presented as the first geography of Europe. So again, Idris is, let's say, is well remembered and also serves agendas of collaboration. Okay, so what we will do is read 2 texts. I suggest you do that in pairs. You don't have to move around a lot. 2 texts you can find on your in the files, but I guess it's, you know, had so much to read that you could read them carefully, and now this is the chance to read them carefully and discuss them. So I will ask you to read several pages from the work of Al-Muqaddasi, which I has mentioned. The best divisions for knowledge of the regions. It is taken from this translation. I apologize, I should have included the details on the slide. Basil Collins' translation of 2001, translation into English. For those who wish to see the original, I have printed copies of the Arabic, and you can consult that. So those pages, they're taken from the introduction. Many Islamic medieval works begin with a personal introduction, written in first person, and they're often the most fascinating part of the work, where the author states his motivation, sometimes the circumstances in which he writes, his methodology and methods, right, and how he went about his project. So I'd like us to look into a few pages from this introduction. And also at his first page of his description of our region, the region of Sham, Syria, which includes Palestine, and the first page of his description of the sea. The other reading is taken from Yaqut al-Hamawi's Dictionary of the Countries, Mu'jam al-Buldan, written in or completed in 1228, when Islam was 625 years old. And also a few pages, all pages from the introduction, which was translated into English by Wahid Jwaideh in 1959. The whole work was not translated. If we will have time, we will look into his description of Hebron, which I brought in the Arab original. So what I would suggest is that while you read, take note of the motivations of the author and the goals of his work. How does he portray or construct the realm of Islam, Mamlakat al-Islam in Arabic? And which methods did he use to collect data and to arrange it? I'd suggest that we divide the work. If we have time, maybe we'll switch, but let's begin with everyone on this side of the room reading al-Muqaddasi and everyone on this side of the room reading Yaqut. We'll see how long it takes, and then we'll come together and share information, and I'll see what I can add to your insights. Okay? For those who have a drive, for those,
I'll send,
you can send, okay. Good. Yeah, and anyone wants the Arabic? Okay, so if you have the text available, please open them, find a partner, and let's begin. Okay.
We're in the Muqaddasi group, but PDF reader,
You make it so
I now have.
No, it was about the 19th century.
Yeah,
I
well,
have it, I have it in this,
you have it in the small version.
yeah, but it's very small.
Yeah, and when you're done, please raise your hand, and if it takes too long, we'll just stop it, I guess.
Yeah, well, but.
Okay, yeah.
Good. Könnt ihr uns mal kurz helfen? Ich habe hier ein Problem mit dem Rechner. Nicht weiß, wie ich auf den Kopf stellen soll.
Okay.
Problem gelöst.
Okay.
Thank you. Just when you rise, it's already done. Okay, best divisions of knowledge. Okay.
זה, אני חושב ששקע זה לא עובד.
Wow.
זה לא, לא, זה אני חושב שעובד.
21, okay, 140 to 41. Okay, so let's start. I'm very bad at reading at the computer. I'm always interested in tables of contents. So 1, 2, 3, history 1, history 2,
I think
this one, and the count of the season. That is interesting.
Very interesting.
Narrative of actual experiences. This is
Yeah,
places on which you can't see. This is the way. And it's 2%. Okay, so then we have an exemplary, the regional. Survey to assign to us. And what, well, we don't know. Maybe something.
It's
from-
I think
It's
it's
in
Jerusalem.
Sur-
I think it's Jerusalem,
Oh, okay.
I guess.
So much more into Islamic geography because it's so rich. Perhaps. Let's start.
Yeah.
Immediately you have an idea of what the mountain is. Mhm. One of these type of so. If I understand you correctly.
Maybe it's not. And because it's the Jerusalem.
Ah,
It's not seven shots for the.
okay, yeah.
לא, אבל יכול להיות שהשם הזה יתקבל, לא, גם עניין ללמוד
Moving.
איפה, זהו, כמו, הסוחר, או יחיד. וכתוב א' כתב בשני אחוזים, גם
וגם
אם זה יותר דתי.
כאילו
Wow.
It's commerce.
Mhm.
אבל כן, absolutely, commerce. within phrases for our, I think.
Yeah, and we talked about ways and whys, particulars of food.
You got, you mentioned it only after. Control and the.
Oh, dear, I'm sorry, I'm really a bit tired, that's my problem.
It goes on and on.
Yeah, very good.
I was like, about the tropes, I'm like, other people because it's already neighbor.
I'm trying to take notes.
And the autopsy and conversation, source space is really important to me. It's the same as her audience, if I tell you what they. Funny, you did a nice time. I think it was on Brian or visit. I had read this book. It's also. Is that how we? Yeah, no, that's. I don't know what the original.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, but for merchants, travelers.
That's part of this. Expansion. That's why it's like, oh, you didn't mention the village. Like, you didn't mention basically like, how can we go out and conquer like these areas?
Military was like it comes with ability trade. While initially conquer and the rupture, that would bring stability and safety.
I wonder how much for when he was comparing himself to the earlier people. That he like he understood that oh like oh that's
Yeah.
how much he said
So it's this very convincing position of trying to.
He seems to be very.
Ten centuries.
Wow.
Much more developed.
Yeah, than the other parts of the.
Clear distinction between what we would consider history and sociology.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it's a very comprehensive inquiry, whatever it is. And that, I mean, obviously, in many ways, religious Yes, and so the landscape is also
Very important for emergency.
history.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any
This is
questions?
great.
I also think so.
Wow.
Wow, I really,
I'm impressed by this.
so it's, the introductions are really fascinating.
I mean, that's a big part of it also, right? Like, oh, this has been neglected by
yeah, he's-
previous people, that's the importance in this
What
side,
then?
which just shows their academic life sort of changes.
Looking for the gap.
But, so on the one hand, there's that, and on the other, there's the lock you anything out.
I could send you by them, that's what I'm saying.
I'm like.
And yeah, the answer to that is because of the context.
Or we are civilization. I mean, same way that the Chinese will say different realms and it's not that these things don't exist. We know we have things from that physical.
Yeah, well, but that's. It turns into a universal story.
I mean, other than. Yeah, I know, he says.
Remember all over the place. Putting it together. Yeah. You know, Benjamin is looking for Jews in territory.
Which he knows is
Right.
Wow. So
multifaceted.
that's
It can
well
be
for the
designed.
next page.
Really is a civilization.
Very
I would argue that it's like any modern academic work that just doesn't look outside the lens of European Western practice.
Page three.
He knows that it exists, it's just not what he chooses.
That is striking. The extent to which it sounds like.
No.
Yeah, that's very.
Like a second.
No. I should write this in my.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's different from his period. Maimonides, and he also opens each paragraph, each chapter with no that.
There are no people in force.
As writing to people.
So he's really addressing.
Yeah, this is the reader.
When you compare this to a building, that's a trope that appears in other.
I feel like that also goes back to you know, God, where he's God is, you know, he's you know, the artist and he creates the world and the structure. I think that's a very, I think, you know, in many ways he is trying to structure his book as a microcosm. In fact, you know, places that back on the way that probably to one legitimize and then you know, it's more than a map. Yeah, it's not true. The full time. It really is something.
It's spatial terms for a spatial thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
This was right about me. Purpose of it really is to change.
Like more generally. Everyone to figure it and like look at the program.
His view of astrology, it doesn't seem positive. Yeah. I feel like he feels like it's just not connected. I mean, that was his like point, I think, here. Was just like, he made these connections. I don't know if at this point that, I don't know if it's already being considered, some, paper.
Yeah.
But also,
I know it's Jewish sources around this time. Astrology, where it's like, well, it kind of works, but it's kind of idolatry, kind of science and. I'll let some people think.
Like, I'm not qualified to speak about astrology.
It's such
I mean, I think. part of this is,
So do people need more time? Or
Yes.
Yes,
We are only in the third page.
more time, so a few more minutes.
Probably around this time of the.
Yeah, let's take a few more.
כן, אז
Everyone else. I like the old man. I used to. It's a good story. The additions are his additions or those.
Okay, this was just the first
Some of
thing.
them. Some of them read like later, like I saw his work. Well, it's like, oh, yeah, I saw that. Someone else did that, maybe like. Maybe he saw the libraries.
Wow, what is
I would
this?
read their very.
This is January study.
I saw that book, it's in that library.
Okay, it's linguistics, linguistic terms.
Especially when we're talking about correctly, then I find things out. This there, and that's for. More than my happiness, and until there's I reference that work in my own work, usually, MS more than that. It's like I don't be. One thing we need a little bit. That was interesting just because I was in Jewish scholars.
Did you guys have any interesting reading?
It was,
Interesting, but we are incredibly slow.
I mean, that's the way to do it. That's
Did he actually write it?
Really?
Send me the report when you're gonna.
So honestly speaking, I haven't taken care of them.
Well, he gave us a gift.
But-
I feel like that's like, yeah, he endorsed his work.
Oh, that's.
I think we can, have that debate right there, just get from the author.
We have name of places. It's not just a driver for. I enter from literary go inside. Easy to be.
Oh, yeah, I would
Etc.
love this.
Yeah, it's very.
Use rhyme, rhythmic rhyme prose for embellishment. I would like that.
Self-reflection.
Yeah, very great.
I love to see that notebook.
So there's the Christian monkey skin.
The Pierce general.
Scribe material and copy it to paper and ink and then kind of erase the monkey skin and take it.
The original Google Doc.
And there are no rubies survive. It's not really good. There are no And sometimes those, you take notes on the monkey skin and like a merchant, you stick them, copy them into a book just in the order of findings. And then you rearrange them in another book. So that you can actually find, but there's this kind of like.
That he, since he wrote this chapter, was
Writing or
was
something,
back.
they start to find merchants.
Note taking goes back.
So this is for me, it's a sign of life.
Certainly to Aristotle.
Like when he talks about himself and
Yeah.
how he did it and
Yeah.
why he did stuff.
Yeah.
In his
So
case.
it's,
And this is.
that's all.
And was, you know,
His
Graphic
own
work was some
invention
particularly
to write like
Aristotle.
this, or is it
The
some kind of
case
formula?
So there's lots of different origin stories, all of them true.
You have to define what is writing and what isn't writing.
Yeah.
When does Victor?
I mean, talk is also full of the question around.
I mean, this is just from my, I know
1800.
how he did this, it's very,
So,
this, these are like athletes, it's like.
the sentence.
Holy man, like within, you know, much older, like around the same time, like doing that kind of. In the Jewish stuff, doing that kind of there's a sick. It was just like, I,
Yeah.
it also being. Like, what- Far down, like, yeah, back up,
Facilitate.
Okay, 3 more minutes, would that be okay? We'll have time for.
Maybe we can jump to.
Yeah.
Other.
Yeah, maybe the,
Sorry?
His eyes measured it. Well, he puts a limit to that. And it's always limited. It's not exactly. I don't know if that was
Yeah,
always
yeah.
a section of the work. It's a material thing. Original Australian sources don't speak about the now.
No, you don't have to.
Right. Hellenistic Alexandria, where much of this technique, many of its techniques.
What did they do?
Daniela. I'm definitely.
So it starts with this abstract notion of, I can measure a shadow type of thing,
No, I
therefore,
don't think.
but
Just
and then they sort of fight in one corner.
Did what I.
Now we can read all of it.
Say, this is how you make perfumes.
Yeah, it's really, for me, it's thinking out of the box.
Because you are. Your research is about.
Yeah, I'm.
That's about the piece.
So. That's wrong.
Yeah, not anything, not from the salon or something. I mean, I'm just. Yeah, no, but then he writes it.
Ancient stuff, because it's still there, and then all of a sudden.
I assume that it's. That's a good bet.
Temporary.
Yeah, and
But
you
not for
could
the-
never
I don't
ever
necessarily
transfer
need
something.
a large Jewish
So I heard my
Then
uncle
like
say
if it's, if it's within the hoodie pattern, if it's written somewhere.
But this is,
especially if it deals with why the Jews lost the prominent.
she also signed ZDF.
The art school.
They, the last year, this was also very.
Used to, but I mean, 1967.
Yeah.
Say intellectual marvels.
Not very happy.
It's very gentle and smart, serious. So every once in a while, when I have time, I go to lectures that.
Early Middle Ages.
They have, they have, knowledge, part of the memory. Proud of it. And it's actually, it's a 12th century Islamic.
Did anyone complete the reading? Most of it, okay. Okay, so, let's begin with, Al-Qadisi, who is portrayed on this Syrian stamp of, 1990. Looking at a map, this work indeed contains maps. If you looked at and we will look at one of them shortly, but his main work was textual, right? So actually, we will look at a map of his father. But yeah, he's portrayed looking at something that looks like a world map. The maps included in this book are regional maps. Map of the Sham. So anyone from the Muqaddasi group can present some of the motivations and roles of Muqaddasi?
It looks like he introduces his intentions and it's very academic. I'm going to do this and this. I'm going to go into these and these specifications. These are the forces that drive me. It's very he thanks God as he should, and then he I think that it was out of context. But there's an excerpt where he says how he suffers and what toil he invested in this big work, and this is where his I want to say this on a personal note, and then he goes on and introducing the importance. So I think that it's very academic, but then was this little note about his own personal.
I think any modern academic can identify. Yes. Yeah.
The nucleus of his motivation is commercial.
Commercial.
He talks about commerce. He talks about measurements, about coins, about the weights for what materials to buy, where you can find them, and I think this is actually the main motivation, and he wraps it up with the religious story, pilgrimage, and prayers for Allah for making this world. So he doesn't want to say it's a commerce book for merchants. It's a brand book praise of Allah, build this fantastic world. But the main motivation, I think, it lies because if it's only for the praise of Allah, you don't need to go to those details of mercantile details. And
So you understand that his main motivation was to provide a compendium for merchants traveling throughout the Islamic world.
yeah.
Yes.
As you rightly pointed out, it was one of the earliest times in history that how scholarly is putting the methodologically very strong points and finding the research gap that these scholars have done this. I am going to do this. This is my method, going directly and talking, meeting people, meeting causes and so on. So look at the way he's engaging in the research and the kind of data he is providing marvelously from, of course, to the lens of finance and geography and culture. Many aspects he's touching and trying to produce the
Right, so it's not only, he's not interested only in the economy or in commerce. I agree that he's trying to present a total view,
Yeah.
addressing all aspects of human creation on this earth.
But I was talking about the first motivation. But after this first motivation, he grows in
Actually, what is the first motivation he mentions?
the praise of Allah.
Praise of God.
Well, and we talked about how he also structures, how he begins with how God creates the world on these strong foundations. That's how then he starts by describing how he is building his own work. And so he's creating this parallel, this representation of between the world itself and his representation of the world in his book, which makes it into a kind of religious atmosphere as well.
Right, he definitely begins with that, but one of the first things he mentioned is his wish to give life to his memory. He says, yes, it has been my wish to follow their established practices and walk in their footsteps of earlier scholars. And
the science which will give life
which
to my
will
memory.
give life to my memory. Yes, he wants to write,
Yeah.
and he succeeded, right? He wants to leave something in this world, memorable, something memorable in this world, but also to be of service to mankind. And you pointed especially to merchants, but he actually mentions other
Pilgrims.
Right, pilgrims. Anyone else?
Description of Jerusalem sort of says if you're a tourist movement or a sage, this is not a great place for you. So in some sense, then there's a lot of discussion really about dangerous places. So partly it's warning you about where you don't want to go.
Right, so this is this book may be useful for pilgrims and travelers, cautioning them or cautioning them from dangerous places, recommending. Interesting, he's a very enthusiastic tourist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's an enthusiastic tourist. Yes. It's also in a sense a tour guide, or tourist guide for tourists. Anything and how about jurists? He also mentions that the book may be useful for jurists.
Mhm.
In what sense?
Since he arranged it according to the legal works, so that it actually would be very easy for them to kind of go through it.
What is the connection between geography and Islamic law? What can it be?
Maybe the chain of transmissions and which scholar met who, was authorized by who, and need to see that they could actually met each other and taught each other.
Okay, so that's right. The geography was important in the criticism of hadith, criticism of sayings transmitted, as it were, from the prophet to his disciples, and then from those to the second generation, to the third generation, to the fourth generation, and so on and so forth. since those sayings known as hadith had multiplied immensely in the first generations, the Muslims took upon them, Muslim scholars took upon themselves the great endeavor of deciding what is authentic and inauthentic based on chains of transmission rather than on content. And the chains of transmission were authenticated if the scholars mentioned in those chains could have met time-wise and space-wise, looking at time and space, and also looking at their reliability as persons. So there's a whole branch of Islamic scholarship devoted to transmitters of hadith, and they are usually located in place. Right, but there are other aspects also, administrative taxation and
Land rights.
exactly. Yeah, are also based on knowledge of territory, and he also tells the history of Islamic expansion and the ways by which territory was taken have implications on taxation and on the rights of the non-Muslim population. So they're basically the two ways of conquest. On Watan by force and Sulhan by agreement. And there's a difference between the rights of population who was taken by force or surrendered willingly. So he puts this information here too. This information is important to use.
refers to military regions.
This is a strength.
Just a weird English
It's a
translation.
weird
for Dar
English.
al-Fawr.
No, not for Dar. No, not for Dar al-Fawr. Military zone. Yeah, he uses this.
Like the frontier.
No, the origin is Ajnad, Jund. And it's an administrative unit. And we are in Jund, Palestine. This is an early division, shortly after the conquest, the empire was divided into regions. Smaller than it's like a subdivision of the regions he's talking about. So Bilad al-Sham, our area, was divided into 4 regions, and we are in Jund, Palestine. And Jund, Palestine included not all modern Palestine, rather the central and southern part of the country, and the eastern side of the Jordan. And the name was of course taken from the earlier Latin name, right? The name the Romans gave. But this is the source. It was known as Palestine from early on, from the time. Ajnad, he used it as a military zone.
It's only Syria that's divided to Ajnad, right? I mean, there was no Jews in Egypt or Iraq or.
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. I came across it in our context, but I think it's used. No, I think it's used in
Maybe it's a reflection of the Byzantine way of thinking about districts as a military district, for military units that were regarding for protecting the district. So it's in a way it's a military division.
Perhaps Jund, you may know Jundi is soldier. So the word definitely comes from the military. At first the regions were ruled by the first governors were the generals who conquered the territory. So that maybe.
And also I think it's much later. The soldiers got the land of this region after they were after they finished their the military duty. They got the land, the payment.
The early Islamic empire soldiers were paid in cash. and there was a hierarchy of, in ranking those entitled to payment from the treasury of the empire. But land was also, we don't have time to go into all this, but there's a wonderful text of Baladowi, who also writes about the conquest, who tells of the endowment of land in the area of Ashkelon already in the times of the Caliph Omar or Uthman. But in general, soldiers will be after. Yes. Okay, how does the main question is, how does he construct the realm of Islam? Contrasting it to the whole universe, so the whole inhabited world. Have you found any devices by which he? Well, the first is very simple. He excludes the rest. He says he hasn't been there and it's of no interest or of no use, actually. It doesn't say it's of no interest, but it's of no use. So the relevant parts of the world for him and for his leadership, as he sees it, are only those ruled by Islam. Now, it's a small comment. This is not the world he describes is not a world in which we have an Islamic majority. Muslims are still a minority in this vast territory he describes. In some of the 14 regions he describes, Muslims are probably still a small minority. But what matters is Islamic rule. So this is the world he portrays, the world under Islamic rule.
It's interesting because the book has a similar distinction, but historically says there are all these geography books that were written by the Greeks, so this is already like the places are forgotten. So it puts them back in history, and it's a different picture with Islamic geography. So it's like it's also a historical distinction. Right.
But even with Islamic geography, he really seems, he criticizes his predecessors sharply. It's like the beginning of Thucydides, you know, there's this other guy who's very loose and we don't believe him, I'm serious.
And how does he portray himself as more serious?
More comprehensive and providing really useful information.
Right.
Is that Muqaddasi or
Muqaddasi. He's more comprehensive and I think he also stresses very much his very thorough manner of collecting data, right? What are his sources?
Well, I accept that he has the previous works, and that when they agree, I accept if they don't agree. I don't accept, like, he has his like ways of trying to validate the information and to verify it. He also has places he's gone to, but he hasn't. And then same thing when he hears from people, you know, it's like if they disagree, then I don't put it in, or I'll put it in this kind of way to let you know that it's not 100%.
So he claims to use information only if he can verify it. Sorry?
He also brings forth the polemics that there are, like, for instance, where he discusses Syria, right? Learned about Iraq, all that on their side. However, as a matter of fact, nonetheless, and then there's the lengthy discussion of what are the actual boundaries. So sort of shared, I think it's also part of the establishment of this authority and the fact that he cross-checks his fact.
Right. And this is also the traditional, he's in a tradition of presenting more than one narrative, more than one version. The Muslim historians do that, and sometimes they just like Tabari, the greatest of the early historians, writing a bit also in the 10th century, may bring 5 different versions about a battle, and he leaves it to us to decide which is the most, often using Wallahu Alam, God knows best. This is somewhere there. Yes, so he prides himself for his travels. He travels for 20 years, and he's not only a tourist. You may have realized that he claims to have worked in many places in a range of jobs. So he really gets an experience of the place, and talking to and engaging with all sorts of people of all ranks, right? So he has this hands-on experience in many places. He also tries to visit as many libraries and archives as he can get to. Yes, and I believe you realize that one of his goals, and this we can see very clearly in his presentation if we jump to his presentation of Syria. One of his goals is to place Quranic figures and Quranic events or allusions to events. The Quran is not a history book, on the ground, right? So he wants to locate the places where the prophets had been or had performed miracles, where they are buried, and all the information we can find about Quranic figures, which you may have realized most of them are known to us from other traditions, from the Hebrew Bible or from the Christian tradition. Most of those, however, which he lists in his opening of the chapter of Hasham, are Quranic figures. The Quran, there are 24 Quranic prophets who are known to us from the Judeo-Christian. And often we find narratives that resemble very much what we know from the Jewish and Christian sources, and sometimes we find things that are unique to the Islamic tradition. But this desire to locate on ground the things mentioned in the Quran is one of the.
So can we assume that when he cites a text, he's citing it directly, or is he sometimes citing an intermediary?
He would cite mainly from an intermediary, from the traditions. Some of the figures he mentions here, or the traditions about the figures, don't come actually from the Quran, but of the tradition known as Qisas al-Anbiya, the stories about the prophets, which is very loosely based on the Quran and on the Jewish and Christian sources. And you may notice that he now those stories are sometimes dubious. He mentions also listening to storytellers on his way. Himself also storyteller. Yes. So it's very much this. I think that it's stressing the work, besides being useful, as we mentioned, to many groups of possible readers. It's a work that praises the land, a word mentioned in the Quran 426 times. So as the creation of God and where we can see the wonders of God. And he cites, like Yahud does, right? The obligation or recommendation to travel the earth in order to see and document the wonders of God. So he stresses, I think those points, as he takes upon himself the obligation to fulfill those recommendations in a way that nobody has done earlier, right? Okay, anything else about the Muqaddasi? Let me then.
To say something of general, what I like, amongst other things, is the real awareness of, the process of writing, style,
yeah.
genre, because we all collect our stuff. And we're so assiduous, particularly people in the room with exquisite, skills in languages and paleography and whatnot. And it's just the aspect of writing and mastering the rhetorical skills knowingly and appropriately. It's what's also very creative about our work, and it's never too early to recognize that. And he gives a great example of sometimes I use hyperbole, sometimes I use this, sometimes I use local parlance. I mean, he's so aware and he sees it appropriate to actually talk about it. And I think that it is a really important awareness for anyone trying to communicate important insight.
Right, thank you, Miri, for raising it. It's really, yeah, it's an important aspect of this work. It's not only a scientific work of photography, it's adab. Adab is the Arabic word for literature, in a very general sense. And this is what, and I think also agree that the works of history written by rigorous historians like Tabari, that brings all the versions and trying to authenticate his sources, they're all literary works. And they're literary works intended for the literati, for the educated person who can shine, so that he can shine in a friendly discussion in the Salon de Yes.
Around the table.
Yes, it's explicit. He provides, so adab is a mixture. It's everything that an educated person should know. And it's a mixture of some scientific knowledge and some religious knowledge, a little geography and a little mathematics and a little, and poetry, of course. Poetry is essential. Philip cites poetry. And so it's, among others, it's a work of adab. It's a work that entertains the reader and provides him with witty, with the material to draw upon when he wants to show his erudition or his wit.
And
Right.
It's interesting that Yakut, jumping to Yakut, says that he started his work because he was asked a question in the salon of someone, and he wanted, about something to do with the prophet, and he says, that's why I started the book.
Right, wonderful. What was the question? What was the specific question he was asked? It's surprising if we think of a work of, what prompted a work of geography?
Was asked about Basha,
Right.
which is a place mentioned in the Hadith of the prophet and the site of one of the fairs of the Arabs in the Jahiliyyah, and then I replied. That's.
But what was he asked about Kubasha?
He
was
the place.
No.
I don't know how you call that, if it's written with something.
Exactly, the pronunciation, the pronunciation. He was not asked where the place is, he was not asked to describe the place. He was asked, what is about the name of the place? What is the proper toponym? Yes, if it's Kubasha or Habasha. And this sets him on a long search in all the libraries.
And praise God, he was right.
Yeah. So we will discuss Yakut in a minute, right? But
But it's interesting because it's why he started it and
exactly yes, it describes the setting of people discussing and sharing knowledge.
I wanted to put an end to controversy.
Right. Yes, so this is, yes, really, what Miri raises here is an important aspect. Yes.
What about his sketch?
His what?
Sketch of Hashem.
Okay, so this is what
That's
I'll
it.
show now. This is what I'll show now. Yes, I'll say just, let's go on. Okay, so first of all, someone put on the map, on the geographical map, all the place names in Muqaddas mentions. So it's quite impressive, isn't it? right? And see how widely. It's not actually, he claims to have been in all the provinces and all the regions, but he may have not actually been to Andalus and to one of the regions in the Far East, but he's really been around for 20 years, 20 years. And this is right, without political borders, this is the range of his travels and of the territory he covers in this book. But what is, we don't see it here, but what is central to this book is the division into 14 regions. And if you've read Saint Antrin's impressive book, Mapping the Realm of Islam, Mamlakat of Islam, she puts a lot of stress on his and other geographers' effort of making the region a meaningful unit of belonging. So one belongs to the great Muslim world, Islamic world, which is made of regions that connect to each other. And a typical name for works of geography is groups and realms, masalik wa mamalik, much on the connectivity between cities and between regions. But we've talked quite a bit about cities, right? Here, the central unit is not the city, it's the region. And of course, made up of cities, but also rural areas, of deserts. He has this, I found it fascinating, a long list of types of land, which some of them are difficult to translate. But he really made, there's such a diversity of territories that he mentions and tries to characterize, but they come together to a region that has an identity, that one belongs to. I say very briefly that al-Muqaddasi lived in a world that was politically divided. It's no longer the one Abbasid Caliphate, even though the Caliph still resides in Baghdad, right, somewhere in the middle of the Islamic world. But since from the 9th century on, the empire is slowly losing control. The Caliph loses control over provinces. It begins with the margins, and then it comes closer home. Muqaddasi was probably born in 941. So when he was 4 or 5, Baghdad itself was conquered by a Shi'i warriors who established the dynasty of the Buyids. And the Caliph, or sort of a symbol, and not a ruler with real political authority for a while. And we see that the realm of Islam is divided into several kingdoms, and some of them Sunni and some of them Shia. It's actually an age of Shia prominence in the Islamic world. So this may also have motivated him to talk of the Islamic world in a whole. It's no longer unified politically, but it's one based on religion, history, and civilization.
But so it seems he has an ecumenical view. He's fairly tolerant towards Shi'i.
Right. Some of you will find in modern scholarship toying with the idea that he was a Shi'i himself. That he actually did this, because anyone traveling so wide in this period, it was suspected of being a da'i, being a protagonist of the Fatimid Caliphate, of the Ismaili Shia. There was a wide and incredible network of secret agents of Ismaili Shi'i Islam is trying to propagate it throughout the world. So they have, it's not, there is nothing explicit in what he writes that, I'm not going to say that, but his biography insinuates that he may have been. So. Okay, so the image of Syria, which appears in this book, is not very clear and not colorful. So I brought one from a slightly earlier colleague of him, Alessia Listachli, a map drawn in the mid-10th century and then copied in the 13th century, late 13th century. So we're not absolutely sure it's the same map, but this is how it looks. And you'll see immediately the difference from Idris's map. Can anyone pinpoint the difference?
Can anyone what?
What's the this looks very different from Idris's map. How can anyone characterize this map? It's very schematic.
Conceptual.
Right. There's no longitude, latitude, mathematical. It's not based on the Ptolemaic tradition, right? There's look. This is the Mediterranean. It's also oriented south, right? This is the Mediterranean, and see that all the cities are equidistant, right? There's no attempt for perspective or proportion. Yes, no attempt at proportion. What are those round green bodies? Circles. Yes, this is Hayrat Tabaria, the Sea of Galilee, and this. That's the Dead Sea, and this is the Red Sea. This is the Red Sea. Jerusalem is right here. Jerusalem is here. Gaza is here. And actually, he's not wrong. You may be surprised that Gaza is not on the shore, but Gaza was not actually on the shore. Yes, in multiple times. So this is Gaza, Masjid Ibrahim, Hebron, yes. Hebron, Nablus, Jericho, Jerusalem, Tabaria. What is this?
The road.
The road to Damascus. The road to Damascus, yes, beginning in Ascalon, Gaza, Ramla, Tiberias, Damascus.
And
Right, so we have a straight line. There's no attempt. Of course, he knew that the shore is not a straight line. The road is not a straight line.
That strong diagonal.
This mountain range, the mountain range, and those are rivers. So it's a very schematic, symbolic map, very different from the maps we showed. Right?
So,
yeah.
in major parts of it is a pictorial itinerary.
Sorry?
It's not a map in the sense, but a pictorial itinerary, parts of it.
It's more like the Atracom map of Jerusalem. Because it's not, that map also looks like a map. It wears the cloak of a map, but it's a schematic at the base. And so I think it's actually more similar in spirit.
What Yossi Rappaport suggests. This was drawn in 1933. It's the map of the London Q. And it's exactly the same idea. It's an aid for memory, right? So again, the stations are equidistant. They're not so in reality, of course. And you have only straight lines. And you have use of colors, right? You also have the distance. Yes.
But here you also have.
An ingenious, I think.
But here you also have landscape features that are concepts, geographical concepts, and here you don't have it. You have seas, mountains, and
You have the
Thames.
Wow.
a river, right? No, yeah, you have the river. That's true. But here, there's more information here, a different kind of information. You don't have.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
They're not
Yeah.
identical, but I think
Yeah,
this explains well
Yeah.
the choices of this map, which Rapoport stresses, do not result from lack of knowledge. It's not that Mukhadasi didn't know better, but or Istakri, it's a choice.
Use case, it's, if you want to go from here to there, this is what you have to do.
Exactly, exactly.
Would, can it be
It's
useful?
a memoir in that sense, but it's actually,
Planning device.
yeah, it's not, it would have utilities to a certain extent.
But it has utility if, it's not a standalone map. You rarely have standalone maps, and it comes in here, and in here, as Ran mentioned, you will find distances from one place to another. He writes the distance, and all those points will find the distances.
But he's
And
not,
you
he's
may-
not, I don't know, it's hard to believe that that people would use this book
No.
to travel.
I didn't,
He
I
uses,
didn't mean utility that way. I meant it genuinely shows you that before you get to Damascus, you stop at Ramallah or you stop at.
Right.
So that's what I mean. Is I don't mean they, what, I think that one missing piece is travelers' practices out in the world would be guided, or you would talk to people who would tell you.
yeah, it sounds more like that the sources he uses are sources of, and his purpose is to present knowledge or to gather the knowledge, and he
encapsulate it,
uses the
yeah.
knowledge used by travelers as itinerary. And then I think what's similar to this is the Pointinger map. The Pointinger map,
Oh, yeah.
which
yeah,
is
or the-
also
or the
lines and.
Yeah, the
That's-
Pointinger map, which is also like stops on, it's been compared to a subway map also. Also, the pilgrimage map of Matthew Paris, if you know that, where it's also points in a line.
So it's a different tradition of mapping.
Do you
Yes.
find that this was copied by itself ever, or that people would, that I'm assuming that that this was pretty small. But this fits on a regular page kind of thing, or is that much bigger than, or was it much bigger than that? I'm just trying to think like, was this something that could easily, let's say you already have in your, you already know how the distance is, around between these kind of places, would this be something that someone could have just this kind of map by itself and maybe
Oh,
use?
Yossi claims, and I rely on him, that you rarely get you don't get standalone maps.
In the West, you wouldn't, except for Morocco.
Yeah, not for as aesthetic artifacts and not as useful. But it doesn't say that they hadn't been, maybe they weren't.
Now is this bound part of the bond, right?
Yes, it's part of the board. Yes.
I wanna shed light on what the aesthetics reveal about his values. That he knows what the real and subjective view of the country is, but when he zooms out, he wants to show a calculated, organized universe, which is which also on a cosmological level, obviously, of the rounds, but also that's the way he wants to display his land. Meaning, not just utility or some form of that, but an orderly world that he is calculating and measuring place.
Also, I find some resemblance to the logic maybe that we discussed yesterday in the urban topography that I presented, right? You don't need to know the measurements of the house, and we have like this, oh, the roads leads to this and this and this and other places. You need just to know that if there's the road, right, the Damascus Gaza road, and Ascalon is this side of the road, and Hebron is over there, and on the shore you have this specific order, these towns, right? And I don't need to know the distances. For this, I have the book. But the map, I just want to have it
The
in relation and not in
No.
proportion.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a relational rather than. Okay, let's devote a few minutes also to your food. So how does Yaqub present the realm of a reflect or perhaps construct the realm of Islam, and what are his? Anyone here would like to relate to the same questions of its motivation, its methodology, and his construction of Islam? Yes.
So we make the meeting between cities and Arab Bedouin encampments, of which he says, I don't know if it's really if it's considered that in Islam and non-Islam, but for the cities, he says it's all pretty much well known. All of the knowledge that he wants to transfer, which is especially the way to write, the proper way to write placements, and with Arab and Bedouin encampments, then that's the main project that we.
So Yakut's main project is not to present a total geography, to say everything about the world, it's topography, it's not, and it's human, settlements. His main thrust is proper names, right?
Yeah.
To list all the places and provide their proper names.
In order.
Not like a reference book you can use, you know.
Why does he find it so important?
So many mistakes. There have been so many mistakes.
A lot of errors. And like in
Exactly.
communication on different levels, and then they have these misunderstandings, so that's why he wants to have like.
Set the record straight.
Exactly, he's adamant to correct the mistakes of, he also stresses how important that is, for whom actually?
Jurists and poets.
Jurists, poets.
People. He talks generally about the fact that it's so important. He starts with this issue of God and how it's important to travel the world, and people are praised for traveling the world, but most people can't travel the world, and therefore it's important to have something that will sort of enable people to, it's not a travel book, but to know about the world through the names, and then starts going through this issue of the names and how important it is to know to talk properly about the world.
He's a mainstay of the poet.
Man of wisdom, fathers of knowledge, physicians. It sounds to me like a modern, like academic book proposal where you're like, this will be of interest to students, graduate students, professors, historians of cartography, art historians, like, sounds a little bit like you're, and then 100 libraries buy it.
Exactly, and he's, they have to use a Hebrew word to explain. He wants to, help people not commit fadichas. Yeah.
Faux pas.
Exactly. Whether preachers or poets or, yes, so it's a shame to make mistakes in pronunciation or in naming, and he takes upon himself the task of providing this knowledge, and really he also says that not everyone can travel, and cites several verses from the Quran that call upon the believers to travel and see the world and tell its wonders, and he humbly takes upon himself this task also for those who cannot perform it. Yes.
I find it a bit funny that he doesn't mention for ruling classes or something like that, because it seems to me, and I don't know, out of a Chinese context maybe, that place names should be rectified in order for tax purposes or for ruling better the empire, whichever such reasons. But I wonder if, considering his background and where he wrote, it might be a hidden motive to write it. Only something you don't state, you're not supposed to state that. No,
He doesn't mention administration at all.
In some way, like imams, but not secular.
Not jurists.
He does mention jurists, and he does also refer to the distinctions you mentioned in the other attack, land taken by force versus by treaty.
Right. So in a sense, I think doesn't simulate that this was useful for administrative purposes.
Like in some way, like not directly, but like. Well, that's in there.
It is implied.
Yeah, it's implied there. It's like, but for instance, the leaders of the Muslim community cannot escape censor.
Yeah, I think so. But again, he claims to address also the uninhabited places in uninhabited areas and regions. He really divides, and so does Muqaddasi, the world into the Arab regions and the non-Arab regions. Arab and Ajam, which is also a convention and also I think reflects cultural tensions between the two groups. But speaking about the non-Arab regions, he's still speaking about Islamic ruled by Islam.
I really like how he placed himself also in view of the scholarly world. I mean, he mentioned the importance of tradition, but also he has this, well, Jessica said, it reminds her of like cover letters to me, it reminded paratext of early modern literature where people would say, never abridge this. This is not your version, almost as a curse of beware of hurting with tradition, and also taking care to attribute his stuff, which is really impressive. I mean, he says other people did filters, and I'm going to attribute everything and sort of regulate transmission, which I find amazing. Things have to be copied in order to survive. So this regulation of tradition of transmission, in a very learned way.
Right. This is also a convention of the Arab Islamic writing to mention your sources. To mention your sources. Often, even the author would add whether it be read or heard. And sometimes it's not clear.
It gives an example of a fadiha of someone
Yeah.
who played this.
That he heard, or yes, heard and read. Yes, he says, referring to writing recruitment. Know then that he who condenses the book is like one who comes upon a common person and cuts off his limbs. Okay, finally, yes, he does speak of administration, and we'll end with this, but listing the contents of the fourth chapter, he says, it treats of the interpretation, the chapter 4 treats the interpretation of legal provisions governing land and countries conquered by the Muslims, as we said. And let me end. Let me end with Yakut saying this to all of us: nothing is more detrimental to learning than the saying, the first has left nothing to the last. For it thwarts ambition and diminishes. So we all still have something to scholarship.